The Monday, March 11th, 2024 regular meeting of the Jersey Shore Area School District Board of School Directors. Could I have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen.
Present.
Mr. Grimgard.
Here. Maybe.
Mrs. Calhoun.
Here.
Ms. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Peters.
Here.
Mr. Furman.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler. All 9 members present.
Mr. Armbruster, can you come forward and introduce our students for the pledge, please?
Evening Board. This evening, we want to invite Isabella Gutshaw and Reese Charney up to lead us in the pledge. Isabella is our first district champion in girls wrestling and state qualifier. And Reese Charney earned district gold in the 50 freestyle and the 100 backstroke. She's going to be competing in the states as well.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hold on. I told him that already.
She's not paying attention.
Thank you, girls. Just so that the board is aware, we typically do recognize all state qualifying athletes, and we will do that. Mr. Minster and I are working on that list, get them all here, but since it was the high school's turn for the pledge tonight, Mr. Armbruster asked me if he could bring some of them early, so that's why they were here, but we will do them all eventually, coming up very soon. Thank you.
Moving on to communications.
I just want to, make sure I'm on first. Under communications this evening, I just wanted to point out that I know there has been some concern in the community about school safety over the last week. And while I do understand from the community perspective that we don't talk openly in the board meeting about school safety very often, that is because school safety is one of the items that is allowed to be discussed in executive session. This board does have a lot of conversations about school safety. We have done a state police risk and vulnerability assessment, and as Safe Schools Coordinator, Dr. Osenbach has made recommendations about upgrades in school safety that we have implemented within the district. At each step of the work that is being done, Dr. Osenbach has kept the board informed of our priorities and checked things off of the list of suggestions from the state police audit. And the board has supported our efforts in making those security upgrades by allowing us to secure grant funds and by dedicating local funds to upgrade our security and our safety. We do, as you know, have 2 full-time SROs in the district that are visible both during school and at school events. So I do want to acknowledge safety concerns that the community has and assure you that we are doing everything we can to keep students safe in school. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ulmer. Under the President's report, we had an executive session prior to the meeting this evening where we discussed personnel. I also just wanted to take a moment to recognize all of our teacher retirements. Mr. John Jarrett, 21 years of service. Jennifer Marriott, 30 years of service. Jenna Ranella, 18 years of service. And Lorette Robinson, 31 years of service. We thank you for all of your years of service. Moving on to the intermediate report, Jesse.
I yield my time.
Okay. Student representative report, Kate. All right, superintendent's report.
I am going to call forward Mr. Armbruster and Mr. Bittner for their budget presentations. While they're doing that, at your seats is a budget update from Mr. Enders. If there's anything Mr. Enders would like to say about that update, go ahead.
Yes, at your seat was a one-page, just update where we are with the budget. Currently, the budget stands at just over $47.6 million expenditures. I want to make sure we are very clear. I don't consider this a preliminary budget. I don't consider this a draft budget. I consider this a working budget. That number will change. So will the revenue number. But we are getting to a point now where we're starting to get some good factual information. The retirements are in that budget figure that I gave you. You'll see in that document how they're in there for replacements. This budget does assume that you approve health occupations this evening. If you would not approve that, the budget will change. Also wanted to point out the information regarding charter schools. This budget assumes, again, that the governor's proposal for a statewide tuition rate for regular ed cyber charter students would go into effect. How special ed is handled, Dr. Ulmer and I are keeping abreast of that from Harrisburg. It's very conflicting information. And then in regards to revenue currently sits at just over $46.8 million. This does leave us with a budget deficit currently at approximately $800,000. You'll hear more about local revenue when I give the budget presentation. We'll be continuing to analyze that. We are seeing an uptick in both earned income tax and in our interest earnings. And then also the revenue budget does assume, and I've put in the numbers from the governor's proposal. So I'll let you can take this document, read through it for you. Please know I do expect additional changes as we work through the budget here in March and April. I did want to give you an update where we were.
Mr. Enders, do you have any idea how many students are enrolled in charter school and special education?
Give me.
You don't know if that's all right.
I have it. I just got about 25 clicks to get there. Special ed right now is 72.
72 at Sugar Valley Charter
No, that's
School?
special ed. You asked for special ed enrollment.
Yes.
Do you want Sugar Valley enrollment?
No, you answered it.
Okay. Just know, with the charter school reform that the governor proposed, it's cyber charter, not all charter. So that does not include Sugar Valley.
How many kids is that
Our,
total for regular and special ed that are in just cyber?
180, 20 minus 26, 160, probably about 120 in cyber. Grand total.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, good evening, board. Mr. Bittner and I are going to come before you tonight to talk through the high school budget as well as the CTE budget. This process, as you know, starts back in October, and at that point, Mr. Bittner and I were both very new to the high school in this process. We're working through a budget that last year 3 separate individuals worked on, so we've had a lot of conversation throughout that process, and we're hoping that this will be beneficial for all of us here. So the first thing we want to do, and I'll sort of cover this so that Mr. Bittner doesn't have to, just talking about the goals that the high school has. We presented this a couple weeks ago. We just want to reinforce, our first goal is to make sure that we're using multiple measures of data in order to drive conversation and increase student-specific interventions. And so we've taken a lot of steps this year, and I want to recognize our teachers and our students for the work that they've put forth thus far. You know, we're working through establishing a similar process that the elementary and middle level have to make sure that students are understanding where they're at in terms of their grades, in terms of their academic performance, their attendance performance, their behavioral performance. 2 weeks ago, I led principals' conversations with all the grade levels so that we could update the students on where they're at and what we're doing. And I want to give the students a shout out because I told them when it comes to behaviors, there's a lot of high schools across the state that would love to have the issues that we have. We have great kids, and I've said that for many years, and I just want to continue to echo that. Our students do a great job, so they should be proud, and we should be proud of that. We've added things like the after-school program to the high school this year. We are working on establishing working lunches to provide students with some extra time so they can access their coursework and get some supports from our staff. We've had a lot of students take advantage of that, so that's part of working towards goal number 1. Goal number 2, we wanted to continue to develop the Bulldog Nation vision and build that culture. I've shared with you before, that was a lot of the information that we got back from the teacher and student surveys, was that there was some cultural concerns and just making sure that we felt pride in coming to the high school each and every day. And so we've done a lot of work with that. We've reestablished some of the building PLCs. We've had 5 specific focuses. We've implemented Shore Mondays, lessons and conversations that we're having specific to our student data. And just today we had another, what we call an MTSS check-in, where all students are expected to check their grades on Schoology during shore period to make sure that we're where we want to be, especially with this marking period coming to a close. So we do those check-ins at least once a month. And every Monday I'm sending out a report to all the students. Today I send the message out to the students and their families. If they're showing up with failing grades, we're making sure that that's getting communicated to everybody so that we're fully transparent. So families, if you're paying attention or listening to this, make sure you're checking your emails. We are sending text messages through Focus just so that you get that information. And then goal number 3, continuing to evaluate the current program offerings in conjunction with the Workforce Development Board's high priority occupations. Now, that's a big part of what Mr. Bittner and myself were here about a month ago when we're talking to you about the changes that the teachers have recommended, those course offerings that you have since approved, and the ones that are on the agenda for this evening. That's all directly related to these conversations that we've been having throughout the year. So in terms of what we've been focused on this year, you know, the PLCs are there. That's what at each faculty meeting, we spend half the faculty meeting, all the teachers get together in these groups. There's an administrator that sort of pops in and checks in on those sessions, but it is largely teacher-led initiatives, things that the teachers felt we need to work on to improve at the high school. So those are the areas that they've been working, and they've been doing a lot of work. A lot of what we've presented thus far has come from these PLCs. And then the other focus that we're really working on is improving our building score. That was the data that I shared in that first presentation. I shared that same data with the students. They got to see where they're at. They know my mentality. I'm a super competitive person, and I think we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get to the top, taking advantage of our opportunities and fighting for that. So some of the things that go alongside with that is those Keystone remediation courses that you've approved. We're starting to plan for scheduling that. Implementing the graduation toolkit from PDE to help us track student progress. Right now, our guidance counselors are doing an incredible job. They've been using an Excel spreadsheet to manage this, and we've really been trying to streamline that so that we can be far more proactive than reactive. So again, kudos to our guidance department for all that they're doing. Mr. Crape and I are trying to build a system that will help them do their job more efficiently. And so some of those projections you saw in the previous meeting that we had, where we showed you like this number of students are projected to pass Keystones and so on and so forth. Another focus has been the 9th grade transition to the high school, making sure that we have systems in place to support those students because it is a significant jump, going from essentially 5 classes at the middle level to sometimes up to 8 classes at the high school level. So we've talked through some of the changes that we're working through already in terms of structured homerooms, encouraging our freshmen to take a study hall to help them with their time management, the double block course that we discussed with the math department, all those things we're hoping will help our 9th graders transition a little bit more smoothly to how busy the high school day is. And then the final piece of that is the attendance program. Dr. Seagraves primarily oversees that at the high school level. She has met with Justice Deere, talked about establishing an attendance court. Students at the high school are now allowed to earn some of their days back by attending the after-school program. That's something that happens at the middle level as well. So we are doing what we can to make sure that we're removing all the barriers for students to come to school and be successful, because we know our best chance at reaching them and meeting their goals is by being at school. So that's a brief overview of what the high school's working through. As far as the budget goes, I believe Mr. Enders sent the file to you about 2 weeks ago. So you have that information before you. I just want to go over some of the big ticket items in each of the functions. When you look at the 1100s, one of the big differences between last year and this current budget proposal is the SSIP grant is no longer available to us. And so we used that to fund credit recovery in years past. And so now that is going up in the high school building budget as opposed to being funded by a grant. I know the elementary level and middle level talked to you about the art program, so that is something that we're spreading the cost across all 3 levels. So that is a big adjustment. And then text purchases, there's a curriculum review process that happens. So textbook purchases, when you look at the line item, there might be some big numbers there, but overall, it's only an increase of $23 from last year to this year. So that's just based on different departments working through their curriculum review cycle.
Mr. Armbruster, so you don't have to come back on this. Credit recovery, can you just give us a little synopsis of what that is?
Yeah, so credit recovery is an opportunity available to students if they don't earn their credits throughout the course of the school year. There are students that do credit recovery over the summer. That is something that we have to outsource at this time. We're using a program based out of Johnstown. There are a small handful of students that are mostly seniors that are trying to earn their graduation credits before June that are partaking in this program, but I think there's less than 5 kids that are doing that right now. But that is the program that we're utilizing to deliver that content.
So is that $5,000 per student?
So the way that it's budgeted is we have $5,000 set aside to utilize. Right now that's us as the district saying, yes, we'll help pay for this to help you get caught up. My understanding is in the summertime, it primarily falls on the families to fund that. But this is the budget that we have for credit recovery. I can share that to date, I have the bill over there in my bag. We've only been billed so far $390. So this is a worst case scenario looking at historical data, what we budgeted to spend in the year past, but we are not utilizing that much of the funding to this point. But summer has not hit yet, so that's a conversation happening.
Thank you.
Yep. When we get to the 2200s, just the big change there you'll see, and I think you saw this in the middle level budget as well, is the furniture in the library. It's starting to tear, it's dated, it's old, so we're working with Mrs. Wirt on slowly replenishing some of that furniture. She's working with the foundation as well to try to get some help. But our library is very heavily used right now between the working lunches and the after-school program. So trying to keep up with that use. This is a change in the budget. You'll see when I get to some of the next slides. Overall, we've been able to sort of cut from some areas so that we can build up there. And then the 3200s, this is primarily within our music program. So our ensemble performances, our marching band, those extra opportunities. There is a pretty significant cost increase in this. As you'll see, again, in the overall budget, there's not much of a difference. But the biggest thing that I want to point out with this, and you'll see some big ticket items, the drill design, that is just comparing regionally across many of the other schools. This was the recommendation that Mr. Lahr came to me with, that if we're going to be competitive with other schools, we should increase the drill design component. It is time for our color guard to get new updated uniforms, so that is included in this budget. Again, that's a cycle, just like the sports teams go through a cycle. This is where it shows up. And there is a xylophone cost on there. Last year we bought a tuba, so in terms of dollar amount, there is no change, but it is a big ticket item. And then the biggest thing is, Mr. Lahr shared with me that we have not updated our contracted carriers cost since COVID. go to all these performances. And so that's up about $5,000 from what it is before, but it's not that that's a new thing, it's just that we were not accurately presenting that in previous year's budgets. So this will sort of break down, each function for you in a little bit more specifics. Trying to be transparent. I know not everybody has the line items in front of them, but when you look at 1100s, you'll see like some of the shifts that are occurring this year. We've added mock trials, so there's transportation costs associated with that. I talked about the credit recovery and where that comes from. And I jump ahead here. If we look at overall, the 1100s, it's up $5,290 as a projection, but 5,000 of that is because of the credit recovery allotment. If we jump through some of the other budget pieces, you'll see we've been able to reduce some supplies in our special ed budget. The textbooks, I know iReady was something that Mr. Valdez talked about at the middle level, so that is something that some of our special ed department at the high school is utilizing. And because I think you shared last week, that program only goes up to 8th grade, but we have students at the high school that are not yet to the 8th grade level. So this is something that our teachers can utilize. It has benchmarking data that can help us close those learning gaps a little more efficiently. The books that we were using were last published in 2004, and we cannot find those workbooks any longer because they're old. So we've shifted to this, and it's actually going to show a pretty big cost savings, and will also help our teachers with analyzing that data and making some quicker decisions in terms of their feedback. You'll see, school-wide positive behavior. Because of Title IV and some other grant opportunities, we don't necessarily feel that we need to have as much money dedicated to that at this point because we're getting those funds elsewhere. And quite honestly, high school students are not always as excited about some of those token economy things. Like some of your elementary students, my daughters loved the bingo the other night. They're all about all that reward stuff and stickers and everything. But high school students don't always want a sticker. So it is what it is. And the other one, you'll see the nurse supplies. There are some rising costs with stuff, which I think can be expected. Then the last piece, like I said, is breaking down the marching band and some of those components. And when you look at like the new equipment I mentioned already, we're asking for a xylophone this year, but last year they replaced the tuba. So all told, at the high school, if you look at last year's budget, which I should say 23-24, but if you look at last year's budget and this year's budget, there is an increase, a projected increase of $7,160. But again, considering the travel costs for our marching band and the costs for credit recovery, we actually were able to cut in some of the other areas. And since we've presented you with this information, I did have a conversation with our business department. One of the areas that is pretty high in the itemized budget is business travel, which is based off of, they have to project essentially 2 years out what the FBLA cost is going to be. So they get a number from the state, and once they get that number, they multiply it by the estimated cost on inflation. And so that gives us the number that we see. And when I talked with the department head, Mr. Griswold, he shared with me, like, over the last 3 years, it has not really come anywhere close to what is projected. So in the budget, we are showing the worst case scenario. I think it was back in early 2000s. One time had 55 students go. So if we're uncomfortable with that 7,160 number, he believes that we could reduce that from, I think it's budgeted as 34,000 all the way down to 27,000, and that would not be an issue. Essentially, we'd be at 0 for the high school. So that is a conversation that's happened since you got your information, but this is an ongoing process, as Mr. Andrews mentioned, so I wanted to update you with that as well.
Question on the books periodicals, the science, social studies, are they all workbooks, the 8 and the 13,000, 21,000 total?
Where are you getting this from?
Your actual budget.
So I don't have that in
Oh, you don't have it, okay. So there wasn't anything,
Wouldn't have
for
been a
last year?
change.
Pardon me?
I think that is related to the approved social studies and science courses.
Yes, and as part of the curriculum review cycle, so when it gets to the point of actually purchasing textbooks,
New courses, okay. Kind of what I thought. All right.
Other questions from Mr. Armbruster?
Yeah, I have a question. Going back, way back to the beginning, and goal number 1.
all the way back to goal number 1.
Yeah. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, that's appreciate it.
It's just kind of a discovery question, when it says that you use multiple measures of data, and specifically behavioral. Assuming that this is an accumulation of data from some source, can you just connect that for me to behavioral, and how does, can you just explain that a little bit?
So, and this is not unique to the high school, at any building, if there are instances where students need to be directed, there is a reporting system. So the teacher will fill out a report. Sometimes those reports have to come to the office, and the office then has to address that behavior. Sometimes they're able to manage it just as a teacher manages behavior. But all of those reports then get coded and logged in a database for us. We use Swiss as the system, so that then we can track, again, any building does this, we can track like where are problem behaviors occurring most often. So when we talk to the high school students, one of the big things was just not being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Wandering the halls, not getting where they need to be. So that is something that then in the principal's conversation we can address. You know, we're meeting as groups in our PLCs. That's something we talk about. Hey, next Monday we need to make sure that we have a lesson that's focused on this to redirect the students. That, again, not unique to the high school. That happens everywhere.
Okay, so it's just specific to how the student is acting.
That's the
what I'm understanding.
behavioral
Okay.
data. So yeah, we're looking at where are the reports coming from, and what do we need to do to help get back on track.
So
You say
for-
you're using the Swiss program, which I understand that. Is that data, district stay here, or is the data stay within our district? That's the
For
question.
the most part, yes, it does. Now, there is some data that needs to be reported to the state.
Right.
Based on the level of infraction, but, you know, like I said, we've got great kids, and so 99% of what we deal with doesn't go anywhere, but internally.
And so what he's saying about tracking where the issues are is if we run a report and we see this week over last week, there seems to be a significant increase in behaviors, reported behaviors, maybe at lunch, then we've got to do, you know, maybe the principals need to be more present at lunch for a while till that goes back down. But to answer your question, most, as he said, a large majority of those aren't going anywhere unless they rise to the level of what is considered state reportable, meaning there's a specific list. If an incident is a fight or an assault, or there's a list of things, we have to report those to the state by a number of them. There were X number of these, there were X number of these, and there's a report that must be filed annually that reports those numbers.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Other questions for Mr. Armbruster?
I have a question about the music program. I know we had a different meeting earlier that we kind of talked about last season, the basketball program said that they wanted new jerseys. I know that the color guard is their turn, but do boosters participate in any sort of fundraising to help pay for any of these things?
So I know Mr. Lahr did reach out to the Booster Club about that. We worked with Mr. Vendors back and forth a couple times on that. He can certainly reach out to them and ask them to help. But as a school, we are encouraging them to be part of this too. So I don't want to put the entire burden on the Booster Club.
you, Mr. Armbruster. Mr. Bittner, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. Armbruster, for going over the building goals, because I'll quickly go over the CTE goals for this year and just crosswalk it back to that. So the first goal for the career and technical education programs this year is to increase our non-traditional enrollment. And what that means is females enrolled in primarily male-dominated programs and vice versa. Our goal is to increase that by 10%. Last year we were at 2.71. This year we're at 4.2. So we have a little bit of work to do, and I have some strategic initiatives that we're integrating into the instructors and through the students to increase that. And that translates directly back to goal number 1, as does our alignment to the Keystone Algebra and Literature eligible content. Our goal in the CTE programs is to understand that if we can't do math and we can't read, we can't do CTE either. So we like to scratch the backs of the academic instructors just as we rely on the academic instructors to deliver the basic skills that our students need. So our goal is to crosswalk also with the career education and work standards, ensuring that these students are career and college ready to be successful because of what we're able to give them here at Jersey Shore. And finally, we currently have 46% of eligible students enrolled in CTE programs. We can increase that by 20% if all of our CTE programs are fully enrolled, which is our goal, because that increases our efficiency. So some changes that you have in front of you this evening are there's 3 new programs proposed for action this evening, and there's 2 programs that are proposed for modifications. And we've gone into a lot of detail about that. But I want to remind you is a lot of grant money is coming in for these highly demanded occupations right now. And that's why I'll make a final note about the availability of external funding, especially for automotive transportation and for manufacturing clusters right now. There's a tremendous number of grant opportunities coming through my inbox. Just to give you an idea of what's hot, what's popular right now, and what we're focusing on. So the first budgetary slide is the budget increases. Obviously, there's a budget increase for health occupations because this is assuming that all the proposals on the agenda this evening will be approved. That's what this budget is assuming. It will change based on the decisions made by the board this evening. The automotive program is seeing increased supply costs because it's the only program that's 100% full. All the other programs have some open seats. Automotive is I'm justifying increased cost because the program is at capacity. Networking is seeing increased costs. He's still catching up from unavailable supplies during COVID that he could not obtain. He's finally able to get those. So he's rebuilding his inventory based on mostly network cabling that he wasn't able to acquire, and that's how we're justifying that cost. Childcare is an increased cost, but a note that is a rather self-sustaining program. The childcare program is a revenue-generating program. The students that come into the program, the littles, they pay a fee, and that is used to offset the costs. And so that's why I'm justifying increasing that program budget slightly due to increased supply costs. And finally, there's an increase in the general CTE budget, and that's because I doubled the co-op travel budget. If the Diversified Occupations program is approved, we double the capacity for that employee, so I asked to double the travel budget. So that's a summary of all the increases. Try to keep it really simple for you. And on the next slide is a summary of all the decreases that we were able to meander to offset those increased costs. Communications is seeing a decrease in supply costs. Actually, I was happy to hear. In my office budget, I decreased by $500 for meeting attendance. I historically looked at what meetings were not being attended and was able to decrease. CAD manufacturing software was a separate line item that merged that $1,800 purchase into the manufacturing CTE program because they're the only program that was using the Mastercam software. Manufacturing, due to the program change that's proposed, we were able to streamline funding and decrease that budget by about $3,500. I also have a lot of grants that the manufacturing program is specifically eligible for that I'm hoping to capitalize on that our other programs are not eligible for. Building maintenance, there's a tremendous decrease there because if proposed, that instructor will have to teach both the senior construction class as well as the 11th and 12th grade building maintenance classes next year, but no 9th and 10th grade classes. So we can reduce the budget by $10,406 for 1 year right now because we're not offering those extra electives. And the 9th and 10th grade classes, they go through a lot of consumables for engagement purposes. The construction budget is decreasing also because if the program changes are approved, there's only one construction-based went through and said that that could be taught for $5,335, so that's the cost that I'm bringing to you. So as I previewed 2 weeks ago, I am bringing you a budget that's 4.23% less than last year's budget. It kind of does offset the high school building budget increase. And the final question for clarity that I just want to address is the business CTE programs are in the high school budget, not in the CTE budget, just for clarity. And that all has to do with the state function and funding codes. Any questions?
I just have one. I'm looking at the line item, I guess you call them the budget. The building maintenance, transportation, CAD, communication, construction. I know from 2023, it says in here, to 23, 24 went up like 24, but then this year, from this year to the next year, it almost dropped 25. Is that because, is that all this stuff here we're looking at?
Yeah, it's due
Combination
to
of all that?
It's due to the proposed program changes, mostly because as, over the next 2 to 3 years, as we merge building property maintenance and construction, we don't have the capacity to offer 9th and 10th grade electives next year, and that's why you're seeing a major decrease in costs.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a comment, though. Thank you both for doing such a good job of really trying to hold your budgets. In a tough economy, we appreciate you guys doing your due diligence, so thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Also, on my report this evening, there is an updated policy, Policy 819. There are some language changes in there and a reflection of some changes in professional development requirements that have to be memorialized in the policy. This is not on for approval tonight, it's just on for presentation. If you see anything in there, the attached version is the changed version, so you are able to see what was changed and how. Also, because we made a change, and that's been typically our process, is we made a change in that position in terms of personnel. So we took a look at the fitness center supervisor job description, made some changes based on input from Mr. Armbruster. Again, it's on there for presentation. You're not acting on it tonight. But if you see anything in there prior to the next meeting, when we take action on it, please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ulmer. Next, we will have courtesy of the floor. I have one person who's signed up, Mr. Bob Fox. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Bob Fox, 1025 Creekside Lane in beautiful Pine Creek Township. I am here to talk about curriculum instruction. I would like to thank the board for all their questions they had for the CTE programs that are on the agenda tonight. I think it's great that you guys are questioning, what's going on. You can tell by what's on here today that, we're streamlining what's here so that it's going to best meet not only the needs of our kids at the high school, but also the needs of our community. I was talking with a girl, I have seniors in my homeroom this morning, or every day, and she is in our dual enrollment health terminology, medical terminology course, going to school to become a nurse. I asked her if they had had the health occupation program, would you have been in it? She said yes, without a doubt, it would have helped me tremendously. She had talked to me earlier this year when she was trying to fill out her FAFSA. She said, my parents can't help me to go to school. I got to try to figure out how to go to school on my own. And I think it's something that's very, very beneficial to many of our families, just to help their kids get a foot up if they're entering that medical field. And we know that there is such a need for it. I think it's great that we have this on the agenda tonight, and I look forward to seeing that get approved so that our kids can have that opportunity next year. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, moving on to personnel. Recommended action to approve items A through M, with G being a roll call. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
I second.
Are there any questions or comments?
You said this is A
Concerns.
through M,
Correct, with G being a roll call.
and G will be a roll
Any questions or concerns?
We'll call that separately. Yes, to clarify, we're going to vote on G separately.
Correct. We will be voting on G separately. No questions, no concerns? Okay, all those in favor through items A through F and H through M, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say aye. Motion passes. And now for letter G, Mr. Enders, please.
call. Mr. Allen,
No.
Mr. Brungard,
No.
Calhoun,
No.
Ms. Edwards,
No.
Mr. McDonald,
No.
Ms. Peters,
No.
Mr. Furman,
No.
Mrs. Thomas,
No.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
motion failed.
Moving on to curriculum and instruction. Recommended action to approve items under A, items 1 through 5. Each of these are going to be roll called individually. And I will have Dr. Almer, as we take each one, have questions and concerns. So we'll take number 1. I will ask if there's any questions and concerns. We will vote. We'll move on to number 2, asking if you have any questions or concerns and so on. So can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Almer. If you have any questions or concerns, he's going to explain.
To start off, number 1, if you will recall, this is the closing of the program where the retirement is occurring. For all of these, I'll overview at once. These are all recommendations from the local advisory committee. This is not just Mr. Armbruster or Mr. Bittner saying this would be a fun idea. This has been studied by the committee. You have the information, but the first one is the closing of the construction trades program where there is a retirement.
Any questions?
So, question on the fact that it says courses beginning in 24-25, and then you have other for 25-26. So this is closing in 24-25, or when the thing is completed?
You're voting now that you're going to close the program. It will end in 25-26 because, as you recall, the
Okay,
kids
so that's the
in it
completion.
will get to
Okay.
complete it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Furman,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, moving on to number 2.
I will tell you, you have information that you've been presented. Based on the vote that you just took, timely, you now are in a perfect position to take a position that you already have in your budget and move it to a different program. When this program didn't get approved before, it would have been adding a position to the budget or taking one potentially from somewhere that had not been determined. Now that you have voted first to close construction trades, you have a position in your budget that would be moved to health careers, number one. I've heard a lot about costs. Mr. Enders gave you a budget update tonight. And if I know some of you have been sitting here in the seat when that budget update initially has come forward, we are, I believe, in a better position at this point than we've been in a long time in the month of March. So I'm going into this vote saying confidently that I think we're in a good budget position to work on closing a smaller deficit than we've had historically at this point in the budget process. We do know, and you have information from Mr. Bittner, that we have 30 students saying that they're interested in being in health careers. Please remember, I know we're worried about costs. I'm worried about the what-if cost. The money that this program will cost you in a position will quickly be eaten up by 3 or 4 kids that choose to go somewhere else to attend a health careers program. So I know it's hard to not cut the position and save that money out of the budget, but it only takes 3 or 4 kids to go somewhere, and by the time you pay their tuition and transportation, you're back there. And we're looking at 30 that are interested. So I'm just giving you that word of caution. I also look at this program as a starting point and making sure that with all of our CTEs, this one is a place where people can continue to stay and work and live in Jersey Shore. And we would be setting them up for that. This is the opening and creation of a health and medical assisting program for Jersey Shore. Questions about that?
Okay. Hearing none. Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Grungard?
No.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Absolutely.
Yes, I don't think we can afford not to.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Moving on to number 3.
Number 3 is the alteration of the current program in place. If you recall, when we went through the process of hiring an instructor, we actually had a conversation about the variety of things that are happening in that program, and it may be best, based on the instructor's recommendation, to streamline what's happening in there. This is that process. It is also supported by the local advisory committee and the occupational advisory committee. That would focus that program on machining and make sure that they're spending a majority of their time on that in that classroom. Questions about that?
So this we're changing to the 480501, right? Am I
Correct.
reading that right? So there's not a problem with completers because they can roll right into this one?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Grungard?
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Moving on to number 4.
Number 4, as Mr. Bittner has presented, would be closing administrative assistant and opening a new program, entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial skills. This would be a change from a program that is not a high priority occupation and has had low enrollment to one that is a high priority occupation and can fit in our current faculty schedule.
Any questions? Hearing none. Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Gelman?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Last one, number 5.
As you recall from the presentation, diversified occupations would be an extension of our current co-op program. Co-op is only open to a current CTE program student. So the way I will explain it is, if you are in auto shop, you can do co-op in auto shop. But this would allow us to take a student who isn't in CTE because their career interest is something that we don't have a CTE for. Mr. Bittner used the example of agriculture. So we don't have an agriculture CTE. But if I have that interest and that's my career objective and we can help that child find a place to do an internship, this is the avenue. So and it can't supplant core academics. So we will work with them to get them the credits they need so that their senior year, they can spend time getting elective credit in diversified occupations in a career objective that they are interested in. That is huge for us in getting students experiences outside of the CTE we offer, because maybe there's only 1 or 2 kids and we can't support a program, but it would allow us to vary our options and give them a pre-employment experience. This will be done within current staffing.
Any questions?
Well, I have a question. There's no cost involved in this whatsoever then?
The only cost that Mr. Bittner presented was an increase in travel expenses for the person who would be the supervisor.
Okay, I guess my next question is then, if somebody, a senior, for example, takes, or maybe there's 2 or 3 classes in the morning, they're free the whole afternoon to go someplace to work, basically. Now, do they have to hold that employment job for the whole school year, or can they diversify and go from, like, say, agriculture to
Question.
surveying somewhere else, or
I'm going to defer to you.
how's that going to work? When do they qualify for this? The beginning of the school year, day 1, or? I mean, I'm for it, but I just want to make sure these questions.
That's a good question, and I can give you some examples. I'm currently already onboarding students who are interested in this program for next year, just because it's a very long process for them to acquire a job or an internship, and there's a 28-page packet that the employer needs to fill out with procedural safeguards and risk mitigation strategies. The answer to your question is, it's not optimal, but yes, a student could switch their placement. There's so much work that goes into developing that employer-school-student relationship, and there's so much time that goes into develop that training plan that it's one of those things that if a student starts a job, I can tell you next year for DO, I have diversified occupations, I have a student interested in cosmetology, nursing. Because remember, the seniors won't start the nursing program, so a lot of them are interested in interning next year. Architecture and design, heavy equipment technician, and cosmetology. That's what I have interested so far. I would say that the student is going to be encouraged to spend at least 1 semester in that placement before even thinking about changing placements, just because of the amount of time and investment it takes into investing in that internship-employer relationship.
Is there going to be an evaluation from the employer?
So yes, absolutely.
Somewhat?
The co-op supervisor is required to do an on-site visit once a month, and the student keeps a daily work log, and they have class once a week for 3 hours.
Would there be any penalty if the student works maybe half the semester and then says, I don't like it, or I don't like the employer and stuff, and walks out? I mean, is there any rebuttal from the school district from your end?
So we have contracts that the student signs that essentially if they would quit their job, it would be like stopping coming to school. It would be filed for truancy. It's all in the employment contract that they assign with their employer.
Okay, all right.
And remember, this is a credited course. So that's why if they don't go, it'd be like not coming to school.
Kind of tough on the employer if they quit midway through the semester or
It
whatever.
definitely is.
They have to work things out somehow, I would think.
Yeah, I I'm very
Good
upfront
experience.
with the expectation that we're building relationships with the employers. The worst case scenario would be that employer never wants a Jersey Shore student again. That's not optimal at all.
Right.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Ringard?
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Stemmer?
Yes.
Motion passes 1-0.
Can I, a question on, do all of these have to now be approved by the state, or some of them already are?
You will, I will apply by the state deadline of May 31st for approval.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's the next step.
thank you.
There's nothing under buildings and grounds, under finance.
I do have something.
Oh, you've changed your mind.
Just because of the vote we just had, I guess.
That's fine, you go right
I'll
ahead.
have to get a hold of Mike and Bill here and maybe set up a meeting and see which direction with you and Mark Law, see what direction we want to go, what direction you want to go with the room up there and stuff like that, maybe within the next 2-3 weeks. As long as you have an idea how you want to retrofit that room or the dust collection system, whatever, and we can talk about that probably, okay?
Definitely.
All right.
Yep, I just wrote a note.
Okay.
We'll show you after that.
Nope, set up a
It's
meeting.
fine. Okay, moving on to finance. A recommended action to approve items A, B, and C. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or concerns?
Clarification on B, we're passing the budget for this year?
Oh, nope, good catch, that's a typo. Please adjust that to 24, 25.
The blast.
And make sure that the people who made the motion are okay with that.
Mike and Harry?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, any other questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say aye. Motion passes. Next, under miscellaneous, just want to note,
Yeah, please note that it is the 24-25 prom, which is next year, and it's sponsored by the junior class, which I did my math wrong, it's the class of 2026. Thank you, Mrs. Williamson.
okay. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns?
I have concerns about A. I know that it's just to get approval for the prom at a location for the next school year. Out of all the venues, I do not feel comfortable with this venue, I'm speaking personally. So, without knowing exactly what security measures, I apologize, I don't want to say anything further.
So I can answer by saying we have always had our own district security present at proms, and you also have a chaperone requirement. So you will have chaperones present, and you will have your own district security present.
Okay, again, that's not enough for me. The world today, especially the past 2 weeks in Williamsport, have been questionable. And again, I just don't feel comfortable at all with if it's a vote separately or more information about security and vote on a later date, since it's so far advanced. And I don't want to say no to a prom because I totally believe that prom is a rite of passage from high school. So that is very important also. My class, we had a tragedy for our prom. So, you can't cover all bases. Even though we signed contracts when I went to school. Do you know what I mean?
Still do.
So I don't know how you want to approach it.
So I would say it sounds like she's asking to vote on it separately.
Could I just add one
Go for it.
other piece of information? Our SRO, now that we have an additional person, they do attend after-school events, and prom would be one of those. I'm just giving extra information.
It's not really, it's the location that I'm uncomfortable with. And I don't know how to, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to say.
Just roll call it separately, I think.
No problem.
That would be my suggestion.
I'll need to go back to Kayla and Sherry. Do I have to amend anything?
You don't have to do that.
Okay. Okay. We're going to just go ahead and roll call letter A, and we'll vote now on letter B if there's no other questions or concerns. All right, for letter B, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Letter A, Mr. Enders, please.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
No.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Kerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Semler,
Yes.
passes week.
Moving on to old business, there's nothing under old business.
I had something, if I may. It was brought to my attention, I attended the last two girls' basketball games. I think one was Loyalsock and one was the state playoff game. And somebody with me brought to my attention that there is, at least we could not find it, any handicap parking available at the high school. Is that true?
No, it's the only handicap accessible entrance is if you park, when you come into the high school, there are handicap spots to your left, and that it is,
By the building itself?
when you're
Or
coming.
from the backside?
No,
Right.
when you turn left at the stop sign and go around the building, to your left, there are marked handicap spots. They're not in front of the building because of the stairs.
They're along the side.
Yes, and then from those spots, there's a handicap ramp onto the sidewalk that's straight into the gym. It is a distance.
Were they all marked? Because they were all taken the other night there, and I'm sure they weren't all handicapped. Maybe they were.
They're
but-
not all handicapped. There are handicap spots marked there, but
Alright.
those to your left, they are not all marked handicap, but there are handicap spots there.
I will relay that. Thank you.
That has come up before.
I would like to ask, or I don't know how to put this. At the last meeting, it was presented in Chad's budget about the iReady purchase of 80 grand. I would like to, as a board, have a further discussion about the use of that program. I don't know as far as the purpose of it at the administration level. I know from conversations the teachers are not using it fully, apparently, at the elementary school level, versus IXL, where it is more compared to their lessons. They can use it as a supplemental tool. As far as the middle school, it does, IXL can be used for English and language arts, math, science, social studies. So I just think that there might need to be more conversation with spending that much money on a program.
And so I will talk to the principals as well, and we can put some more information together.
I'm assuming nothing. Anything else under old business? Okay. We will now have courtesy of the floor.
Shelley Helm, Hyatt Township. I just have two observations. Yeah, tonight under E, curriculum and instruction, the diversified occupations, I don't know if this has anything to do with, let's see, I already have it. It's in policy 217 already.
Because we already had a co-op program.
You did? Okay, I was just wondering if you already knew it's already kind of there. All right, another observation, I might need corrected here, and this is kind of, has to do with what Ben discussed, he said. Now, is this for this school year? The revenue is at 46.8 million, and we're at a deficit of 800,000. Is that for this school year or next school year?
24, 25.
Okay, well, it leads me to something here. I have this total contract for the teacher's contract. Okay, so I'm looking here under next year, 24, 25. So it's going to increase by $871,927.48. Okay, is that where you're getting your deficit? By that increase?
So the first thing is, those figures you have is a point in time. We're not at a point in time. The contract is in the budget that information I provided to the board this evening.
Okay,
So the answer to your question is current teacher's contract
right,
is in the 24-25 budget for the staff that we have.
okay,
And with the projected staff, that's what the board got information about today.
okay, so that
Meeting with
includes
four
the
teachers that have-
retirees, the
The 4 teachers that
deductions.
retired and their replacement.
Okay, but we're still at a deficit of $800,000.
That is correct. Right now.
All right, well, on top of what was collected, I'm not sure, here I'm reading at the bottom, the Act 1% collected, all I have is 22, 23, you don't have the 23, 24 on here.
Because when that document was produced, we didn't have that number yet.
Do you have it?
Yes.
How much was collected and what?
What do you mean, how much? We have the new Act 1 number, if that's what you're
No,
asking.
I already know what that is.
Oh, okay.
No, right here on your Act 1 percentages, you have it, here it's 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22, 22, and 23. Historically, you have them written here. Okay, but you don't have the 23, 24. Oh, yield, please.
So our Act 1 resolution in 23-24. $5.6%.
5.6%.
This year's 7.3, isn't it?
What is it this year again? 7.3?
7.3, I think I remember.
7 point something.
7.3.
7.3. Okay, so do you know how much you collected on top of what's already collected locally?
That's where I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Right here. In 22, 23, 4.7 that was the Act 1 index. So $447,278 was collected.
I think that was probably the value.
Right. Okay, so that's how much you collected on top of what the
No, that was the value.
Yeah,
That's what we could have if we went to that number, but we did not
Right.
in multiple of those years.
but last year was 5.6. You collected actually 5.6? No,
No.
what did you collect? Know what the Act 1?
We didn't have an increase.
I'm not understanding what your
What
question is.
percentage of the Act 1 index did you collect last year? It could have went to 5.6. But what was the actual
Nothing,
number?
because we didn't raise
What was-
taxes, correct?
Now,
That's what I was thinking.
Right, we didn't raise taxes, so
I
we
don't believe
collected
raised
none of it.
taxes, but I wanna confirm.
Your time is up, Mrs. Helm, but thank you.
All right, do we have that number?
Mm-hmm. I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
No, we did not raise taxes at all. Actually, Clinton County went down
Right.
1%.
But do you know what the percentage was? It was
Zero.
It was 0, so it was still collected at what, 4.7? 4 point what?
There was no Act 1
What was your Act 1? What did you collect? What was your number that you used?
Mrs. Helm, your time is up. Please take your seat. If you want to ask these questions, you can
I'm
use
just telling
them
Mrs. Hom
tomorrow.
what we did to the tax rate.
Okay, what was the rate?
The increase was 0 to Lycoming County,
Okay,
went to rebalance, and Clinton County went down 1.06%.
okay. But we're still at a deficit of $800,000. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Denise Boyd, and I'm from Masters Township. And I want to commend the board for all you do. So unselfish in your time, and I really appreciate it. Tonight, I'm inquiring about the district's policy concerning religious expression. May God's name be mentioned by the students while they're in the school building. Sixth grade students at Jersey Shore Middle School are concerned about their lack of freedom of speech. Policy concerning what they can talk about while in the school building.
That answer isn't going to be given here this evening. But if you would like to formally address that, you are welcome to make a call to Dr. Almer, and I believe he would be willing to have a conversation with you concerning that.
Also,
You're welcome.
do we need to be concerned about the amount of time children are using iPads during the school? Dr. Ulmer, do you know how many hours are spent staring at an iPad during a normal school day?
I'm in buildings all the time, so yes, I'm aware.
How many hours is
I
it?
don't think I could give you a number per child, per grade level, but
Approximate?
it would vary by grade and by teacher and by building.
Okay, because I'm hearing 3 to 4 hours a day looking at an iPad and students experiencing headaches, not feeling well by the end of the day. Is there any complaints that you're receiving?
You're the first person to say that to me.
Okay.
So if those parents are complaining, I would encourage them to contact a building principal or myself and not go to you, because if I don't know about it, I can't address it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Missy Williamson, Limestone Township. I'm the class of 2026 advisor, and I just want to thank you for approving our prom. I can assure you that we have done our diligent research in multiple different venues. We've looked at security. We looked at the size of the venues that could hold our junior, senior class. And I just thank you tonight because we're going to be getting a great venue, very well lit. Felt very safe there. We met with the lady who's in charge. She's actually a Jersey Shore graduate, so we were very happy about that as well. So we're going to go ahead and get that booked before it gets booked. And once again, I appreciate you approving that for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sharon Sullivan, Bassett Township. And I personally want to thank Mr. Peters for bringing to our attention the agenda of the fair left extremists by diving into the foundational intent of the play, Keep Marching. The road to the March on Washington our 7th and 8th grade students experienced a few weeks back. I am finding more and more that the educational ideology of our children are exposed to day in and day out is that of the far left in the name of social justice. I can only pray, and I mean pray, that parents will hear that what Mr. Peters is saying and start researching what your children are actually being taught before it's taught to them. The way the material is presented can be misleading. It is important that we start looking past the feel-good package the material is wrapped in and see who is at the core of the material and see if they have an agenda. Mr. Peters, please continue to communicate your findings, as we can only change the path we take if we know that the path we are on, especially those that lead to the indoctrination of our children and destruction of our country. And we all know parents they're super busy. I mean, parents do need to be here. Grandparents, I'm a grandparent. We do appreciate what the board does, and we know we're all here for the best interest of our children and grandchildren. And also, I want to thank you, Dr. Ulmer and Ms. Edwards, and the security of our kids and grandchildren. You can't put a price, you can't put too many people in the schools. You can't do enough to keep our children and grandchildren safe. And again, I appreciate everything that you do. And also just want to put a little plug in for Grandparents' Day for the elementary at Jersey Shore. Thank you again for all you do.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we will close courtesy of the floor, and we will adjourn the meeting.
Is this,